Greetings from various parts of Georgia. As Alex, our new JOLer, joins me for his first YouTube show. Um, we'll give everybody a minute to jump in, as typical. People kind of scatter in over a few minutes, so give everybody a minute or two, and then we'll start jumping into the questions from the JOL board, and then of course you can jump in here and add some questions in the comments, and we'll get to some of those as well. Thanks everybody for joining us. Make sure you like and comment and subscribe to our YouTube channels. It helps all of us out and helps keep the wheels rolling at JOL.
We
So
want
we'll
to do
give
that.
everybody a second here to jump in. Doo, 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 doo.
After
There
a
we go.
long, busy day of driving to Fellowship Christian for a big commitment.
You probably felt like you were going to like one of your old schools up there as you go through all the back roads to get to Fellowship.
Yeah, I've been down a few. I've been down a few lonely roads in the state of Georgia for high school football.
All right, we'll go ahead and jump into some questions here just to get the thing rolling. We don't want to drag the people along that are watching this later. I'm going to skip the first question. I'll come back to that. That's about basketball. We'll come back to that one. Um, I'll make a note to myself to come back to that. Um, so, with the possible Christian Garrett flip and possible Petty commitment, does Georgia Tech finish with the top 15 class? What did I did the math? Let me pull the math up that I did yesterday that I sent to Alex. Because I calculated that, but I mean, there's still guys moving around. Like I said, I wouldn't be shocked to see Christian Garrett drop out of the Rivals 250 that's coming out this week, and I would expect Sam Turner to actually jump into it. He's been moving up slowly since our Rivals camp. He's also very talented. Dalen Penson's a guy who could move in to the Rivals 250. Duke Dinkins. There's some dudes that could eventually end up there before the end of the season. So all of that stuff comes into the rankings formula as we figure that out. Let me find the team rankings. Sorry, it's taking me a second. And then I got to pull up what I sent Alex. Do you remember what the number was that I gave you just off the top of your head for if
Yeah,
if they get Christian Garrett too?
yeah. I think it was 20th. I
Do you
don't know
remember
that.
what the point total was though? That's the thing I'm trying to figure out.
No, let's
I
see.
think it was below 1800, right?
Yeah, I believe about 1740 something. Let me get to the right page here.
So the issue right now is the formula, and guys are moving up and down in rankings, so it changes a little bit. To get in the top 25 in our rankings, typically you would need to be like above 1900 points. I think with if Garrett commits, depending on where he is, depending on if Sam Turner is, where Petty is in the 250 that comes out, as guys are moving up and into it too, there's going to be this is the one that always has the most slides in it. So be prepared for whatever might happen when this gets released. But this is the one where all the summer got like all the stuff that everyone saw all summer goes into these rankings. So they change like probably pretty dramatically, other than maybe the first one in March. This is one of the biggest jump points in terms of rankings. So we'll see what happens. 1900 or so will get you into the top 25. I'm looking back 2 years. Yeah, I mean, that would put you in the top 20 most years. Depends on how big classes are. With the thing going to 105, that could also change the math a little bit too. So, um, yeah, I don't know if your top 15 is a big jump from where they. I think getting in the top 25 again, and being a solid class where it's not like you're just taking guys that have high rankings or guys that other schools didn't want for whatever reason, or some of the weird stuff that went on in the previous administration with some of that stuff, trying to take guys for the sake of like guys with bad knees that were never going to play. Some of that stuff that went on with the last administration. If you can get out of that and you're taking legit dudes, I think that matters a little bit more than maybe 4 or 5 spots. But realistically, of course, that would be a huge win for Georgia Tech in terms of the PR battle, I guess is would be the best way to put it.
I just found
Um,
on the message board it was 1794 if I get Garrett and Petty.
so,
So
all right. So most years that would put you, yeah, right around 25, 26, 27. Depends on, again, a lot of stuff depends on what happens above you. If there's like an outlier school that jumps up, like some of the schools you want to watch if you're trying to figure out if you're going to end up in that group is like Arkansas, South Carolina, TCU, Mississippi State, Texas Tech. Those are the ones that tend to be like in that little fringe area a lot of times. And you can move ahead of those: Washington, Nebraska, Kentucky, Carolina, North Carolina. Utah's been one that's kind of stuck around there. Those are the schools that you want to jump if you want to be in the top 20. So that's where that's at. Next question: with potential high profile commits from Petty and Garrett, potential, okay. Um, Along with an already impressive list, are we doing anything differently with NIL, or is this Key and company better at selling the 40-year plan? I think they have a really good plan for how they're doing the NIL structure and what's going on. And I think that's part of this. They're very honest about this is where everyone slots in on the team. These are our spots. This is what we spend. This is what you look, what would be likely for you to get an NIL at Georgia Tech, all of those things. And they've been pretty like right on with the players. So the players on the team now are able to tell these kids, hey, yeah, we're not getting screwed over. There's a lot of schools that are underpaying kids, and it's becoming an issue where they're not paying them what they promised them. And so that's become an issue at some programs, and it gets around the recruiting circles. So because Georgia Tech has taken care of their guys correctly so far, and Brent's pretty big on that, like making sure that they live up to their end of the bargain, you can sell your NIL vision part of it. But I think it's all an encompassing thing, right? They're getting guys because of relationships with coaches, um, because of the way Brent Key recruits, because of the strength of his staff, both the on the field staff and the off the field staff. There's lots of people with tons of connections to different kids. A guy that had a big hand in Josh Petty's recruitment, along with Brent Key and Jeep Wade, was actually Aaron Joe, who was with him during his OV. And Aaron kind of told him what it was like to be the student athlete at Georgia Tech, to play offensive line at Georgia Tech, to go through all of those things. And those things matter, and you have representatives of the program within your coaching ranks now. You have, DeAndre Smelter, sorry, DeAndre. Brent's obviously a great example of it too himself. So I think you're seeing some of that too. I think you can show them, and Brent. The thing with Brent too, man, is he can call up dozens of people, and people can cross check him on guys he went to school with who are not millionaires in business, or football didn't work out for him, or guys who played in the league that were here with him or whatever. So I think all of those things play together, and then the fact that there's a lot of positive momentum, and you know getting to a bowl game last year, beating UCF, doing well in recruiting, having a high profile offense to sell, having an interesting defensive coordinator that has re-energize that side of the ball this offseason. Like, those things all stand out to these kids, and it starts to create momentum. And the biggest thing right now is you're seeing is they're able to basically help keep the class together when you get these kids. So if you're Sam Turner and Auburn's trying to beat you up to come to Georgia Tech, and now they just beat out Florida State for Josh Petty, and they beat out Georgia for Demola, and they're about maybe to flip Christian Garrett from Georgia this week. Those things are all huge if you're Sam Turner, Dalen Pinson, Duke Dinkins, the guys who jumped in early, right? Like, that's the stuff that can make this like turn into special. So I think it's going to be kind of fun. We'll take one from the chat here. Best Georgia Tech vibe since you started covering GT. No, I would say this reminds me a lot of what happened my first year on the beat, which would have been 2009, the 2010 class, which was Paul's best class. And that was a really talented class. They ended up having some weird luck with some injuries, and some guys didn't work out. I think that one, I don't remember. They ended up like in the 40s or something, but they even signed 20 kids that year. But if you went to the average stars, I think it was a top 20 or top 25 class. And at the top of that class, you had a guy I still talk to all the time, Denzel McCoy and BJ Bostic, and Ryan Ayers, who ended up, Algro ran out, Anthony Williams, who ended up having injury problems and didn't quite pan out, but Lewis Young, who was a guy that was really good, Jeremiah Tachu was in that class, DeAndre Smelter was technically recruited in that class, but ended up playing baseball at first. Isaiah Johnson, who played quite a while in the NFL. St. John Days, of course, who came to stardom his senior year. So that was they hit on a lot of guys in that class, and they had a lot of positive momentum. That was around the time of the Stephon Tuitt drama, and then they came out and the next year kind of stunk with all the Nesbitt for Heisman and stuff, and that's where it gets into creating and maintaining momentum, and that's been the big struggle at Georgia Tech, right? You have 2008, 2009. Those are two really good back-to-back years. And then 2010, Josh Nesbitt breaks his arm. They lose at Kansas in the beginning of the season. And then Nesbitt breaks his arm when they're beating Virginia Tech pretty soundly on the road on a Thursday night. And the wheels came off the wagon. And then it took them a while to dig out of that. And then 2014, then they have the injuries in 2015, and the 2014 team was like all seniors. So you go into these phases, and that's the thing that Brent Key's trying to avoid now, the ups and downs, the yo-yoing of the program, by being deeper. And that's where you see like what they're doing on the defensive line now with the transfers they picked up, or some of that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, Alex, you have a different approach to this because you were someone that's followed this from a fan perspective until now. So
Yeah,
I don't know. What do you think? What are you seeing as the vibes, man?
I like I don't know, it's like the pulling the rug out from under you every time you think it's going really good. It's just there's a guy I used to work with in Calhoun that was Georgia Tech fan. He's a little older than me, and he just talked about how every time that Georgia Tech program, you seem like it get some momentum, have a good year or 2 years, it'd be right back down to earth. The next year something bad would happen, injuries or just have a bad team, and it just seems like for my whole lifetime it's been like that. You never kind of build momentum, over several years. It's like a little bit at a time, and then it goes back to, go back down to earth. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is kind of building up to more of a foundation, and with the transfer portal now, and then recruiting too, the way it's been, I think it's a little easier to maybe sustain for like I would say a little mid tier to above that kind of program. And so I think that's what Brent Key and the guys down there are trying to dig in on, and hopefully this can be the string that breaks the cycle of the past 30, 40 years of one step forward, two step backwards, because we Georgia Tech fans certainly have felt that, you know, right up close. So
I think that Brent Key would take exception to you calling them a mid-tier program, Alex. He might MF you the next time we go down to practice, but if he hears that. But no, I mean, I think really since O'Leary left, and they had the start of the cycle was probably, to be honest, is when they had the flunk gate or whatever they called it, and they lost scholarships, and that impacted Gailey and impacted all the way through Paul. That carried through where they were just thin, and then Paul struggled to have depth for various reasons. And the big thing that changed too is like the viewpoints of the SEC, the money Georgia Tech was spending on football staff, all of those things, all kind of, and now they've reinvested in it. So you're seeing some results, I think, there too from that. So I think it's been interesting. But we'll see. Next question, and both of us can talk about this. I keep hearing hype about the defensive line. What should we expect this year? How improved are they going to be as a group? Will Sylvain be his old self? How good is height? Did Kevin Harris finally put it together? Pumped about Zeke Lockett and JJ under Simpson. So the first thing is the group underachieved last year. Like I would say that they took a step backwards from what I saw the year before with David Turner and Coach Knight, Larry Knight, coaching that group. They played better the year before, and obviously lost Sylvain early in the year, and they just really didn't have very much. They didn't have a lot of dynamics there, other than the game at Wake Forest, where it turned out Wake Forest was not very good, and Kyle Kennard kind of went off in that game. Kevin Harris is a guy that, like you mentioned, Kevin Harris, right? Kevin Harris is a guy that's got all the physical tools, looks the part, right? Like you look at Kevin Harris, you're like, this dude can play football. He has great motor. He just was not. He hasn't been developed in the way that I think anyone expected, and it was a problem all the way through him transferring Alabama to Georgia Tech. Like it hasn't clicked, but apparently it's clicking now for him. Sometimes light bulb comes on late. Sometimes it's coaching. Maybe that's Kyle Pope and Jess Simpson. Um, with Sylvain, Sylvain's been through this twice. He played 2 years after the last injury and was great. He was great 2 years ago, behind Keon White at that one end position. I think that as you look at Sylvain, I expect him to be pretty good. And the thing with Tyler Santucci's defense is he's going to ask him to play 35 snaps. He's not asking him to play 60. And that was the thing that wore Sylvain down, was playing 60, 65 snaps. They don't need to do that. They have Machias, they have Josh Robinson. You have other opportunities to do mixing and matching with guys on the defensive line. So you don't need to play Sylvain 35 snaps. Romello Height. Romello Height, the only thing that's held Romello Height back was being healthy. He was very productive when he was on the field at USC. He had some injuries early in his career that kind of derailed him. And I think that he is a freaky dude, and I think it's fair, maybe where they have him rated in the NCAA football game. To be honest with you, I've heard some really rave reviews about him, but we'll see what he looks like in a game. I think just the coaching piece of it, watching Jess Simpson work is incredibly impressive, and I wish there was a way for me to like actually kind of explain it better than I do, but he's just, the detail and stuff is amazing. Watching how that whole kind of group works together with him and Pope and the other people they have helping them down there on the D line, it is very impressive. It's so organized. Everybody's on the same page, teaching the same techniques the same way. Everything's reinforced. They can break the group up into different combinations and work them out and drills. It's been sort of night and day with that. And yeah, think about it. Right now they have, you have Machias, you have obviously Zeke, Horace, Jason Moore, who all played last year. Okay. Then you added JJ Vandenberg and you added Thomas Gore to that group. Okay. So that's like what, six guys that have all played major college football snaps a lot in their career, older guys. And then you have like someone like Shameik Jones who's coming along. And I think that it's kind of exciting to look at the future possibilities there. I think that the defensive line is is the most improved group on the team, but they're playing against themselves, and that's the rub.
I I I I think the biggest thing you talked about is the depth right there because like defense finds a position where you can't play. Like you can't play even if you're the best guy, you can't play all the snaps. It's got to be a position where you have to rotate guys in. And I think last few years it's been a big drop off from the top guys to the guys that's had to take snaps. And I think that now there's some depth there. And you can say the same thing about the offensive line. I really think on both sides of the ball at the line of scrimmage, they're as good as they've been in a long time, and they've got as much depth as they've had in a long time. Defensive line, like you mentioned, all those guys have played a lot of snaps, and you're talking about Sylvain. I mean, y'all, a lot of y'all read that in the story I did today, but I mean, we still got to remember that he's pretty young in the game himself. So he's even though he's a redshirt senior, he's I mean, he's only been playing football for 6 or 7 years, so I mean, he's still growing and he's a physical specimen. So I think the potential is there for him to have a really, really big year. I mean, if he can stay healthy, which is he seems to be back fully healthy. He said his rehab was good and everything, and so I think not being on the field as much, like you said, is going to help him to be healthier and be more fresh out there and be able to make plays, um, more consistently than he has earlier in his career.
All right, we'll take one from the chat here. Um, so this is a question about how they're going to filling out the rest of the recruiting class. I would say the defensive tackle position, which I expect to be sort of buttoned up here by at least the end of the month, if not the end of this week. Looking at Christian Garrett and Blake Beal in there as probably filling out those spots for now. They still have. I still would not be shocked to see. What is his name? The kid is committed to Tulane. Uh, Landing, whatever his name is, Jermaine, the kid from Hoover. I wouldn't be shocked to see him end up in the class late as a late take. And then looking at the rest of what they're looking at, it's really the linebacker position. That's the majority of their recruitment. They'll want to add one more wide receiver. That'll probably come more from like watching kids this fall. The linebacker spots, we'll see what happens. I think they're still on TD Daniels pretty hard. I think the AJ Rice ship probably sailed for the moment, but you don't know. Like Mississippi State may look terrible with they have a new staff. You don't know what that's going to look like. In the secondary, they're still recruiting Cam Strong pretty hard. Some other guys that are maybe in the mix there. With what they've added, it becomes a little bit less of a priority if they feel good about where some of those young guys are. But again, that's another spot where they can circle back and get somebody late. There could be somebody now that didn't pick Georgia Tech. And then here's the other thing too. There's coaching changes, situations coming in the fall. So there's a lot that can be in play. I think the goal is to not be like over full and be able to pivot when you see an opportunity to pick somebody up that could help. I did not miss your hoops question. I will come back to it.
You mentioned receivers. You wouldn't happen to be thinking about the guy that was wearing Georgia Tech shirt today to
Evan
team up with
Haynes.
him?
I wouldn't be shocked if they stay on him. I think they're trying to find something very specific with that last receiver spot. I think they want like a true burner. Evans is a fast dude and a good all around receiver. I think they might want somebody a little more Eric Singleton ish for that last spot. So we'll see where that goes. Back to the questions from the board. Real talk, how bad is losing DJ Moore for depth in the secondary? What are we going to do there? I feel okay about. I mean, I feel terrible for DJ. Let me say that DJ's a great dude. I really have enjoyed getting to know him. He has been snake bit. Unlike most kids I've seen in his career at Georgia Tech, just cannot stay healthy even when like there's opportunities for him to get on the field. The big thing there is they have a lot of position flexibility. So all of the nickels, no safety. All of the safeties know both safety spots. You have Tacey Moore is sort of like I guess the Miles backup, and then Jaden Davis and DJ Moore were sort of battling out for the other spot. So you have DJ Moore there. You have Christian Pritchett, who they signed from high school, and you have Troy Stevenson, who can also play there in a pinch. Plus, Omar Daniels and Saeed Gibbs could play safety if you need to. You could even move someone else around if you had to. I don't. That's not like a crazy situation, and the reality is that is the one position maybe on the defense where I think someone will play 60-ish snaps is that safety spot. That's the one where they're going to get the helmet comms and all that. So I think their thought is that's the position that probably is going to roll the least. And then they have a bunch of cool safeties coming in, like Duke Jenkins and Phoenix Felton and the bar kid from East Side. So I think that they've got enough in the pipeline coming in and enough to get through the season. Certainly, I don't think they're going to be having to move some guy around or something. I think I'm going to walk out there and see Trey Horn playing safety or something the next time we're at practice.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean,
let's-
yeah, with Lamiles, Brooks, and Clayton Powell-Lee, I mean, they're two of the most experienced guys on the defense. So that's a position they're probably going to be on the field more than up front and at linebacker because they've been there. They've been on the field a good bit. So that's kind of who they're leaning on in the back end to take the majority of the reps. But like you said, when we were there the other day and talking about DBs cross training, and I mean, and they seem to be pretty familiar with each of the positions. They can kind of just mix and match, and um, guys feel comfortable out there playing different positions. So that's always helpful. I mean, when you don't have as much depth as you would, as you would like to have, you have guys that can play different positions. That definitely helps.
someone asked about also asked about linebackers and how much better I think they'll be. That's the first thing I noticed the first day of spring ball, watching Tyler Santucci and how he coached the defense and how he coached his position group, which is linebackers. Him having Bill Stewart there now, able to put his hands on them too. They look very fundamentally sound. Like they the run fit mistakes, the things they even would see and watching a practice a year ago. A lot of that stuff's been cleaned up. A lot of the mistakes last year were just basically, guys being in the wrong position or maybe the call was wrong against something and they got caught in a blitz or whatever it is. I don't. And Santucci just seems to have this a little more organized, and I think that his attention to detail has really positively impacted guys like Kyle Eford and Trent Tatum who are coming back, and even a guy like Jackson Hamilton who hasn't played much could be a guy that could help them out. Um, and then you have EJ Lightsey and Tajay Butler, the two really talented guys that they brought in EJ from UGA as a transfer after he didn't really play there. And then Tajay came in early as a true freshman. And I think both those guys have an opportunity to help them out this fall too. So I feel like they're sort of five really solid options at linebacker for them. And then they actually have a couple of decent walk-ons and some other younger guys that could slide in there if you needed to test depth. I don't think they'll be in that position though. Um, the DL should be stacked, making everyone else's jobs easier. I feel like if one, okay. Um, someone asked, has there been an increase in injuries in football over the last 5 years? I feel like it is exactly the same as it's ever been. I think about 5 years ago, is that when Lucas Johnson tore his knee in spring and fall camp, like the first scrimmage of the Jeff era, maybe. Um, like there's just I remember. I mean, the worst year I've ever covered was I just talked about earlier. It was 2015 when they had like I think it was 320 games lost that season to guys in the two deep or whatever. I went and calculated it. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen, and part of that might have been from playing. They played extra games the year before, obviously playing the ACC championship, going to the Orange Bowl, but like they were just beat up and then had a rash of injuries that year. So I think it just goes in waves. I would say Brent would say they're, pretty healthy. I mean, maybe three, you know, four significant injuries out of 100 and whatever man roster is pretty good spot to be in. Um, so I feel like they're relatively healthy. Hopefully they can stay that way for the next, what is it? 10 day, what, 11, 12? I don't know. What are we, 13 days from kickoff? Is that right? 12? Something like that.
Uh, Saturday was 14 because that was my Joe Hamilton day.
So we're
So
12,
12,
12, 11. Yeah. So we'll see.
that
Um,
2015 year was that's when we came off the high of 2014. Orange Ball said, "Man, I'm gonna sign back up for season tickets right in time for 2015." That debacle of a year, I remember it well.
Um, uh, is it common for teams to assign Haynes King a spy, or is that strategy outdated in football? I consider his threat as a runner to be the offense's best weapon. Um, uh, I don't know. It's not. It's something I pick up on as much. That would probably be a better question for like said. He might notice that. I think that. I think that when I look at the way defense is playing, I think if you start spying him, then that creates a whole other set of problems because then you get into the read option game and stuff, and then Jamal's one cutting some dude down the field. So I think with the RPO, it's harder to do the true spy stuff. I don't watch enough NFL to know how teams defend Lamar Jackson or Tua or whoever, different types of quarterbacks. So that's something I guess with what I'm watching in a game, I'm not noticing, and maybe someone's more defensive minded would probably pick up on it. But I can't say that I've heard people talk a lot about that, so I don't know. Uh,
I don't remember off the top of my head people doing that a lot last year, but it might have just been because they weren't. It was Haynes' first year, starting there, so they might not have been as familiar with what he can do with his feet. So I don't know. That might be something that happens a little more this year, but I don't remember that happening a whole lot last year because I don't know, people just weren't, you know, familiar with him being able to run as much.
Someone asked about McFarland's role with Josh Petty, um,
I
and
mean,
they know his
when
family. Did he talk to you about that? I didn't get into
I
that
know
with him.
that as it was in my coach speak as Coach Johnson talked about McFarland's role was relatively pretty big because he was the coach there, I think it's 2021, 22 maybe. So he was there with Petty and the Coach Johnson, the head coach, said that he was kind of the one that put Petty into their ear once he got to Georgia Tech and kind of ramped up the interest in him. So I mean, he played I would say a pretty significant role, but I mean they were going to find him anyways. He's right up the road, so
Um, with the Petty commitment, is this the type of win in state they'll make other big time players give GT a second look before signing day? That was something I alluded to earlier. Yeah, I think that when you have this is the thing you're talking about momentum, right? Like in recruiting, you can have momentum and when you're playing on the field in games and people believe in themselves. It's the same reason why you see in like Major League Baseball, or that's probably the best example I can give, when teams go on these winning streaks, right? And they say, or like you're the White Sox and you have the opposite of momentum and you're like awful. Those things like snowball on you, man. And like that's how teams get real bad. That's how you can turn into like Duke of the Ted Roof era, like, or you can turn into being something consistent. And good coaching will overcome some of that, but at the end of the day, you do need some positive momentum. And Brett Key's created some for himself. If they get to 8, 9 wins, then that's the true proof of concept. That with the difficulty of this schedule, if you somehow get to that, I think that really is a game changer for what's going on with Georgia Tech football long term, and Brent's ability to get them where he needs to get to, and to get the financial backing, the things that he needs from the fan base. Because let's be honest, in all of this, at the end of the day, it's still college football. It's not the NFL. There's no that's weird. Um, it's college football. There's no weird like revenue sharing or any of those things that you get in some pro sports. So fans can have a positive impact on those things, giving to NIL, donating to the school, all of those things. Um, So I think that that's an important thing to remember in all of this too. And so Coach Key having proof of concept in year two, I think would go a long way. And everyone knows how difficult the schedule is. It's being talked about nationally. We'll see what happens. I said if you win 7 games with the schedule, it's a hell of a coaching job. If he gets above that, then he's in the ACC Coach of the Year discussion, in my opinion. And and probably up for the Dot Award and those things eventually. Like that's the stuff that can really be a turning point for the program. But you need a lot of things to go your way for that to happen. Last year, for example, they got very lucky. Haynes King played pretty much every meaningful snap of the season that they wanted him to play. I can't remember the last time that happened to Georgia Tech with a quarterback. It would be not even JT. You'd probably have to go back to like No, it wasn't even Nesbitt either because he missed games. I mean, I can't even think. Maybe Joe Ham or something like maybe Godsey, like going back that far. Like, so you had good luck last year. But you had some bad luck with some of the picks that Haynes threw. How do you weigh all that stuff? That's where it matters. And I think ultimately though, when you have momentum, people will want to join your thing. And whether it's a recruiting website slash news website like I run, or it's something else, like you can build on it. Look at like how many fads there are in life and things that people get into, or like Peloton, right? Like Peloton hit a perfect storm during COVID when people were locked up. They made huge money, but they weren't able to figure out that people would naturally go back to gyms as soon as COVID ended, and like kind of torpedoed their company. There's lots of stuff that um, in life you have to be ready to change and adapt and all those things. That's where I think Brent gives Georgia Tech a little bit of advantage. He's trying to think several steps ahead, and this is one aspect of it. Is this uptick in recruitment? We'll see what happens next. Uh, So Tatum scheme works for him, or Santucci just not the linebacker whisperer? No, Tatum's doing well, man. Trent's doing really well. It's oh, I see what he set corrected himself. Gotcha. Um, no, I think Santucci just knows how to coach these guys. He's very demanding. They were very clear with Trent too. Like when he came out, remember if you remember correctly, he went into the portal briefly, or was going into the portal, and something like that. I don't remember if he actually ever physically went in the portal, or not physically, but uh, on paper went into the portal, or not. I forget how the timeline of all that, but it was like, hey, this is our expectations for you. That's the thing with Brent, man. Santucci's almost, and one of the players mentioned this. He reminds him a lot of Brent and how things are done. Like, it is very matter of fact. This is where you stand, and these are my expectations for you. And I watched Trent Tatum as the first day of camp. He took a wrong step on something, and Santucci just stopped everything. He blew his whistle, stopped everyone on the field, and went over to him and was like, "Hey, this you did this wrong." And so that's the stuff that I find interesting. Here's one for you, Alex. Petty says he's going to recruit some guys. Do you know he's recruiting?
I mean, I'm sure I'm sure Garrett's one of them. I mean, there's not a whole lot of spots left unless they're, trying to flip a few guys, which, I mean, I've got the guys that written down that you mentioned earlier, Daniels and guy from Florida. So Strong, the
So
former
there's
Carolina.
that. There's 26 guys. He's got two teammates. Georgia Tech's recruiting really hard. That Alex will have stories on coming up. There's even like if Georgia Tech decides they want to go all in on Evan Haynes, that could be a possibility. And the thing too with North Carolina is you don't know what's going on there. Like they took a huge swing on Jeff Collins, and Max riding a lot on there, and we'll see, man, if like he can, maybe he's better at running the defense, or maybe he's better at doing something else that doesn't involve being in the ATL, referring to ATL or anything close to that. But they got some talent at North Carolina. We'll see what they do. I think that there's going to be a lot of stuff in play as the coaching carousel starts to kick off again. I think there'll be another wave too of dudes retiring and some of that stuff, guys leaving the business.
But
Not a lot of people are excited about the 105 thing.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say with Mac Brown. I just don't know how. I think this might be his last go around. I don't know how much more he's got in him to stick it out through you know through these changes. He's kind of like Saban. getting there to the point where do you want to kind of figure out all this stuff, or you just want to move on and do something else? And I guess it's going to be a whole lot of changes coming. Already has been, but yeah, with the scholarship stuff, it's a whole other thing they have to figure out on top of NIL and transfer portal and everything else they're doing. It's a little harder for the old school coaches.
Yep. That's why I've seen some people like Saban leave. There's always been a perception that GT ceiling as a program is limited for various reasons, money, academic, blah, blah, blah. Have I ever talked to Coach Key about his perception of GT ceiling? Does he believe they can win a national title in the future? Brent thinks the ceiling is wide open, like there is no ceiling on the program. He believes that truly, like to his core. Like we have had many interesting conversations, like off the record, about everything related to the program, both before and after he became the head coach, and even when he was the interim coach, when we were talking about stuff. And he always found it interesting that I was more pessimistic about it than he was, and I think he um, I think the resilience that you learn at Georgia Tech and the things that he had to overcome as a coach and the obstacles and all of those things make him maybe more able to figure out this is how you solve this problem, right? The biggest issue Georgia Tech's had from the top down during my time covering them has been basically the leadership is frustrated by the restrictions of the program, whether it's the amount of money that's being donated. That was a big thing with Dan Radakovich, was that and the debt load. He was obsessed with the debt load, right? And didn't figure out a way to be proactive to try to solve it. There were ways to do it back then. The thing that I would always bring up to him is like what Clemson did with like Iptay and all that and raising money. And he wanted to instead milk like major donors, and he sort of sucked some of those guys dry, to be honest, and financially, and some of those big projects they built. And then, Babinski, I think, got frustrated with just this is what it is. And like after he was trying to find his next job as soon as he could. And as much crap as people will give Babinski, in the beginning, he truly did have like a plan and was like trying to do stuff. And I think the general inertia of trying to push things without a lot of support from the president was difficult for him. And then you get into Todd, who was an ideas guy, but was terrible at execution and management of his people. And, and then gets conned by a guy who didn't deserve the job to replace Paul Johnson. When you look at those things, and then you had COVID and all those other things. Well, Cabrera comes in. Cabrera basically is put in a position where people have pushed enough on him for he understands, I guess, the importance of academics, right? I mean, of athletics in the academic world, to where he's invested into the program, and now he's got skin in the game. So you have some support there for the first time. So that's the first top support in a while. Then you have Jay Bad, who's a creative AD, the guy who's trying to climb the ladders of college football and college athletics and whatever you want to call it. As an AD, has worked his way up and is a clever guy, and he's using the different resources he has and his ability to raise money and those things. Then you have Brent, who's a coach who's very creative in how he does things and how he raises money and all of those things. And I think you have hit sort of on the right formula for the first time in a long time. They've had like some real weird 80 situations here that don't make sense. If you gave, like, Radakovich did a decent job, but he was scared of the debt. And so that influenced his decisions, making him cheap with coaching hires. I mean, you look at them hiring Brian Gregory, which is still the most, it set the basketball program back 15 years, hiring Brian Gregory. Um, or not hiring the DCs that Paul Johnson wanted to save 200 grand, which they probably lost in season tickets over the next 2 years. All of those things, like, kind of go along with it. So I think that we'll see what happens. But I just say that I feel like things are on the right trajectory right now.
And everybody's on the same page. That's what the biggest thing is. I think for the first time in a long time, the president, athletic director, and coach is all on the same page and knows what it's going to take to compete in college football in present day. So that's where I think that maybe the momentum is something here to stay and not just what it's been, over the last 2 decades.
Here's a question from the chat about the playbook. I don't know. This is something that was interesting that Jeep Wade and Brand have alluded to, but it took them time last year to kind of find their identity. This is what our offense is. This is what we do well. I think they thought it was one thing and then ended up being something else, which was kind of a run heavy downhill team that took shots down the field. They were a little more spread out, trying to run more of a kind of a traditional spread earlier in the season, and then they've kind of refocused on the things that were working for them. I don't know what it's going to look like as they try to evolve this. I imagine it's going to evolve again as the team's a little different, the personnel's different. You have someone like Jackson Hawes, who's a really dynamic tight end now. That you can mix in there your deeper receiver finally with Chase Lane and Leo Blackburn back, and you have obviously Singleton and Malik Rutherford, who were your two cornerstone guys last year, and then you got some speed guys like Larry, and you got some young guys like a Zion Taylor or Isaiah Canyon who might get mixed in there. So Bailey Stockton's another one. Like they got depth at receiver, you got some options at tight end, you got maybe running back room is not on the surface as exciting to me as it was a year ago. With Dante, knowing his capabilities, I think Anthony Carey's ceiling's incredibly high. And I think Trelane Maddox, when he's healthy, has an opportunity to be a really exceptional back too. But it's just a question of those two guys being so young. How do they mix into it behind Jamal? But Jamal Haynes is very good. I'm just curious what it looks like. I don't know. I don't know what. I know they've been working on a lot of different stuff. I'm not going to talk about what we see different from the spring because that's literally like the one thing that would get me like blackballed forever. And I have no intent. I'm not trying to cause Georgia Tech to lose games or lose a competitive edge or something like that. That's not my interest. I want to see them do well. So makes my life easier if they win games above and beyond any other thing. My life is easier on a Saturday night if Georgia Tech has won their football game, and it's easier for the next 7 days. So my goal in all this is to share what I can with you guys, but there'll be some roadblocks where I don't share some things at times too. I don't know. Do you think are you playing the video game, Alex? What do you think? Is there some stuff in there they haven't shown a lot of yet?
I'm not very good at it, so I don't know. There's a whole lot of
Did you lose
interceptions.
to Duke or something? What were you telling me last night? Who's it that you
I,
lost to? Carolina? Was it?
well, let's see. I'm at game 11 right now in my first year of my dynasty. I'm 6-4, but it's the most Georgia Tech 6-4 of all time. It's like I lost some terrible game. I lost to Louisville in a game I was up 2 touchdowns. But then I come back and beat Notre Dame that was ranked in the top 10, I think. Then I lose a game to Virginia Tech. Then I come back and beat a ranked Miami team. So it's following the path of the Georgia Tech season. So, but yeah, I mean, if the video game shows you anything, they have a lot of different weapons on offense, especially receiver. There's the receiver group is very very deep, and um, I
And
mean,
Leo's not in the game.
right, yeah, I mean, without him, and I mean Chase Lane is like way down the depth chart on the game for some reason too, but I mean, I think Buster is a really dynamic offensive mind, and I would hope he would stick around for a few more years for it because he's going to be a head coach at some point in the not so distant future. But I think every year they get with him and an experienced quarterback he's going to figure out a way to score points. That's the biggest thing. Um, you're talking about the receiver group a little while ago. I obviously Singleton's going to get a lot of attention because of what he did last year, and then Blackburn coming back. I mean, just looking at him, the defense is going to focus some attention on him. I think Chase Lane is a guy that's kind of a sleeper. Uh, I think he could have a pretty good year. I mean, he was hurt almost all season last, and like he tried to get out of injury. But with the attention that's going to be on other guys, I think he's a guy that's going to be a pretty solid option for him. And like he was telling us the other day, it's his last go around, 6th year in college football. So I think he's gonna I think he's got the chance to have a pretty good year with that receiving group the way it is. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't, I'm excited about the offense. Just when you're settled at quarterback going into a season, which like you said hadn't happened in a long time, it's you feel pretty good about it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean they're settled. Yeah, I think they have sort of the top three guys. I think that at QB and um, with Haynes and Zach and Philo. So I think that they're in a pretty good spot right there. Someone wants to know about Marshall Pritchett. Um, is GT going to spin back? They have his brother on the team as a walk-on safety right now. He's at safety. He played linebacker. No, I don't see them going back on Marshall Pritchett right now. We'll see what happens. They're pretty good. They're pretty excited about Luke Harpering. I can tell you that. He's on the team now. They have Josh Beetham back for another year. You have Jackson Long, who should be back from his ACL this time next spring. You have David Prince, who they added. So I think they got some options at tight end, and they have two committed right now that they like a lot. So I think they're in pretty good shape right now at the tight end spot. I don't think you're going to go much past that. I do like this. I appreciate your story, Will. This is very funny. Um, I've seen, it's funny, man. I've walked around stores and seen like half-eaten Oreos and all kinds of weird stuff you see people like getting into in the store. But that is very funny. Someone stealing some cherries out of a bag. You probably get like Wick or something, right? If you were like poor and probably buy some cherries. I don't know. Different thought for another time. Who's QB? Who's running back two? Evan Dinkins, Dinkins, Cooley, Anthony Carey, or Caleb Alexander will come from that. Those four dudes. I don't think that's been settled. My assumption is that it'll be situational more than anything.
Yeah,
Uh-oh. My little toddler's like trying to get in my office. That's not good.
but I mean, by the end of the year, I think Kerry will have definitely solidified himself.
Yeah, I
Has
think
been
that.
about
Yeah, I
their
think
guy.
I think Carey's gonna is Carey and Maddox are like the running backs of the future once Jamal's done. But I think it's gonna be a little bit before you see those, before you necessarily fully see them involved because it depends on where they are at pass pro, what they're calling, what the offense is. So someone asking if the defense is more bend or don't break, more sacks. I think it's. I mean, I think it'd be hard to have fewer sacks than they had last year. So I think that I looked that up. I feel like it's a real bad stat, as I recall. But yeah, I think that there'll be. I think just the better coaching makes a huge difference in terms of that and the player development with in terms of your defense and getting after the quarterback and all of that stuff. Georgia Tech was where were they in sacks last year? Uh,
I mean, just having the same guy consistently all year, be the voice that like instead of switching guys mid
105th
year,
out of 132 teams,
that's not very good.
and second to last in the ACC. The worst team was Virginia, who was literally the worst team in the country for sacks last year.
But
So
yeah, having Santucci, like you know who the guy is. He's going to be there. He's going to be the guy running the thing instead of switching stuff in the middle of the season like they did last year, and people were trying to figure out their roles. And I don't know, it seemed like a kind of a cluster last year on defense. So any improvement there is going to help them win games. So
oh, here we go. Here we go. Will coming with the insane question. I know Alex would cry. I did have to travel Alex to the national championship game. We would not leave him at
I
home for that.
I was thinking about the other day. I don't know what.
Be your first time on an airplane. Alex hadn't been on an
Yeah, yeah.
airplane.
I'm not very well traveled. I'm a little country boy, so but I don't think it would take much to. I'll probably have to cover my head because you want to be professional in the press box. But yeah, I might shed a few tears from time to time if they beat the team up the road in Athens. Everyone, sometime in the future, or
If
I don't know.
you're standing on the field when they do it, which I have been twice.
I tell you, I was I mentioned this in my intro, but I was
Three
there in
times actually.
2016 when they won in Athens, and I'll tell you what, I was in the upper deck, but man, if I could have got down to the field, I would have tore up some of the hedges myself. So
um, would I cry? So the question is, would I cry if Tech wins a national championship while I cover them? Um, God, I don't know. I think I would be. It would be very emotional. Just part of it too, man. And like this is the thing y'all don't think about is the relationships I have with a lot of people. Like Aaron Joe. I've known Aaron Joe since he was 16 years old. I was a little high school player at Lake Gibson High School. Um, Brand I've known for a while now. Like, there's a lot of guys I have some deep relation. DeAndre Smelter, like, have good long term relationships with. And even people who work around the program. Some of them have been with the program for 20, 30, 40 years. So it would definitely be an emotional moment. I can tell you that. It was emotional in 2009. It was my first year on the beat when they won the ACC championship in Tampa. So,
can
so
we get
yeah,
that one back? Is that since
they
Reggie
need to put
Bush?
that thing back up. I don't care. Put it back up on the
Well,
stadium.
I mean, Reggie Bush got his Heisman back, so I think we should get our 2009 ACC title back.
Someone asked about top 60 in total D. I mean, I told you if they hit top 70, that should be 7, 8 wins. If you're top 75, 7, 8 wins. Top 60 would put me in the 8, 9 win range. Do they get there? I don't know. It's hard. The one thing that's a little bit hard for me to you know uh, the questions I have. They had Duke at 42 last year with some good talent up front, but they were not deep at all. I don't know. We'll see. I'll do the FSU. We'll do another video before the game, and I'll do a prediction. I'll do one from Dublin in my hotel or something with Alex. We'll do long distance. I'll give you a prediction. How many 4 or 5 stars from the Atlanta area? Give me a second. I can look that up actually. Uh, you want to take a guess, Alex? Is what the number is for that? Oh, wait a second. Of course, I hit the wrong thing.
I don't know, 10 maybe. I don't know, more than that maybe. I don't know.
So Georgia is one of the more impressive states in terms of star power. Um, so in the 2025 class, is that right? Wow, there are, according to our database, 52 4 or 5 star players in the state of Georgia right
Wow.
now. In 24, that number was 50. And in 23, 42. So 40 to 50, if you're Brent Key, you want to hit on, ideally, if you're Brent Key, you want to hit on 10 of them. But realistically, 7 or 8 would be pretty solid of the group if you can get there. So we'll see.
Well, again, I'll go to Athens. So
I think both teams arrive at the same time. Jet lag, yeah, jet lag's gonna be a thing, man. Do, 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 do. Was last year defense more of a talent or depth issues? Um, that was a little of everything, man. They were thin, they were um, all that stuff. So I don't know.
injuries, yeah,
Yeah.
injuries helped last year too.
There's definitely some key injuries, but like Sylvain was the biggest one. And then Lamal's getting hurt in the first game, and he was not the same for most of the rest of the year. He tried to play through it and just was not himself. So yeah, we'll see. Uh, um, Someone asked me about NIL and high school players and prospects and how all that stuff works. Brent has a strategy for NIL that he works with the collective to understand where they're, what he's looking for, and they are very transparent in what they do for kids and what they don't do. And I think it's been very successful. Yes, they've raised a lot of money. They still need more, and that's what I would tell you about NIL stuff. I do like this question. Maybe we'll end on this one. Can Georgia Tech be to Atlanta what UM is to Miami? So you want to have like all the weird sidewalk fans and like half your or not a half, let's say 3/4 to 80% of your stadium not be Georgia Tech alumni, and like have like people who look like they were being hunted by Dog the Bounty Hunter in the stands. Is that like the move that we're going for? Sorry, I can't. I don't like Miami fans. They're in my Mount Rushmore of most obnoxious fan bases, along with Central Florida and LSU, for the most obnoxious fans to deal with as someone covering an opposing school to them. Just over my entire career, and I mean, I get what you're saying. Can it be like the city embrace? I mean, if the Falcons continue to suck, sure. That would probably help actually if the Falcons are bad. But oh, sorry, he clarified. My bad. He was talking about recruiting. My bad. Sorry, brother. I misinterpreted your questions. So you want to talk? You're talking about locking down the ATL, drawing the was it Paul Johnson maybe said you draw like a border around Georgia and try to defend the state. Um, So what's interesting to me about all that, and I haven't looked at Georgia's class this cycle, but they got really out into recruiting nationally in recent cycles, and got away from recruiting Georgia hard. You see this happen sometimes. Alabama just went through, obviously a big change there, and right now they have like one of the top 10 players in Alabama committed, and he's hanging by a thread, I think, at the moment. So um, can you get, yeah, if there's 50, 45, 50 guys, can you keep at home 15 of them? Maybe in the future if you do really well. I wonder what that looks like. Miami's tried to do that at times, and they've had trouble keeping their program even running and being organized and having success and developing players. So I just wonder about the what happens with the element of having that many kids, especially with NIL money now and stuff, and in their own backyard. Does that create problems? What's your culture like? Miami's got a cultural issue as a program and has for quite a while, and they're not talented enough to overcome it like they did during Jimmy Johnson or Erickson or whatever, when they were just exceedingly more talented than other teams. With everyone recruiting nationally now, it's changed a lot of that. So can you dominate your area? Maybe. Can you draw a circle around the 285 around 285 and recruit in there? I don't know, because a lot of the kids are probably outside of 285, the Georgia Tech recruits, but from the metro. But like, I don't know. Georgia's always going to be probably a big dog in the state as long as they're good. And you have Clemson right down the street. You have Auburn on the other side of the state line. And you have Alabama down the road. You have Florida is sleeping, waiting there. Florida State. So you got to win your battles when you can, and they won one today with Josh Petty. Um, so we'll see what happens. We'll end with this. Alex, we both got you got to talk to Josh Petty now twice in a week and spend some time with him. I got to finally like really spend time with him for the first time today. Kind of what are your impressions on Josh, and kind of what do you take? This is your first big commitment story you're going to cover.
It
Kind of
is
any thoughts from that?
good timing for me to get on the job to get right before this commitment. But yeah, I mean I've talked to him a couple of times. I think he is. I think he's a really smart kid. Um, I think he's like a perfect tech kid to perfect kind of kid for this big of a profile recruit for Georgia Tech to get, if that makes sense, because he's a really good player and he's got it together. He's very smart about the game, and we were talking about the way he looks. He's a little bit taller and skinnier. I mean, he just turned 17 today, so I think he's got the chance to obviously put weight on his frame. You mentioned his dad, meeting his dad today, and you can see that he's certainly a bigger guy. So um, yeah, I like Petty a lot. I think he's a really good kid, and he's one of the ones that you wanted to win that battle, not just because of what he was rated, which is a 4-star according to Rivals, and you know I've
Oh
been
no, you're gonna take the shots in here.
I've been fighting the battle on Twitter all day of people replying to my, "Oh, he's a 5-star." I was like, "Well, I'm going by Rivals rankings, so I mean, maybe they'll move him up eventually or whatever." But I was like, "Man, I got to go by Rivals rankings. That's what I'm doing." So, but yeah, that's been a constant battle today on Twitter. But I mean, it's a pretty big recruiting battle to win. I think he's just as good as a kid, and um, he's got a lot of potential still to grow. So.
Well, cool. I was impressed with him a lot. You guys saw my video with most of you probably on here saw the video. If you haven't checked it out, it's on the YouTube page. I got to interview him. We talked a little bit before and a little bit kind of around different parts of it, but I was just really impressed with him. I'm very impressed with all the kids I've met in this class so far. Look forward to meeting a few more of them over the coming months. We're going to be out on the road, pounding the pavement as Alex and I cover Georgia Tech recruiting like no one else. So want to thank everybody. Thank Alex for we popped his cherry tonight on the to go back to Will Archer's line, and I thank everybody for joining us tonight. And make sure you tell your friends about. Make sure you tell your friends about Jackets Online. Get them to join. That allows us to do more stuff. The more of you there are, the more things that we can do. And thank everybody. And we'll see you next week. I'll be in Europe, and Alex will be here covering the team for the first couple of days. I'm actually going to take a little bit of vacation starting on Saturday before before the team goes over to Ireland. So Alex is going to have like 2 days of sitting being in the hot seat with Brent Key. I'm going to send him a bunch of questions. I'll get Brent to yell at him. It'll be fun times for us all.
Maybe there'll be some media availability next week. I don't.
Maybe, yeah, we're in what may be a dark week this week at Georgia Tech. Stay tuned on that. For whatever reasons, we don't have media this week. I don't know whose idea it was, but no one's very excited about it on the beat. But we'll see what happens. But thanks everybody. Appreciate you, and stay tuned.